Today we're doing part 2 of a self-love mini-series. This is very impromptu. I decided to do this because part 1 had no outro because my phone died, and I don't know, the fact that there was no end to that video just kind of sparked an idea, I guess, that why don't I just make another part? So that's what we did. But it also, self-love is such a big topic, and it's kind of the overarching theme of the entire podcast, so to make one episode about it did feel a little bit strange. So we're getting 3, okay, and this is part 2. So part 1, last week's episode, to me, how I visualize it is the first episode was like the first layer of self-love. It's very internal, about building that kind of basic relationship with yourself. And for part 2, this episode, I'm kind of seeing it as like the next layer. Like, I'm kind of viewing it as like, okay, say you have a decent relationship with yourself, say you do treat yourself pretty well, you haven't necessarily got major issues with that. It's more, how do I maintain it? How do I keep that? How do I stop it getting ruined all of the time? Because I feel like it's kind of one thing to learn how to look after yourself when you're alone and sort things out mentally a little bit. Like, that's kind of one thing. But to know how to kind of protect that, you know, there's constant disruptors in life, whether it's people, relationships, jobs, you know, anything. It's like, I almost see it as like, if we've put in all this work to grow a relationship with ourselves and, you know, make ourselves happy in that way, we need to be able to have kind of a structure of how to maintain that and keep that safe. And so I thought today I would kind of talk about how to kind of maintain that good relationship with yourself, because I feel like it's so easy to kind of lose that grip on yourself and to kind of fall out of those healthy habits. And I feel like this is just as much self-love as what I talked about in last week's episode, because it's kind of loving yourself enough to make sure that you stay in a good way and that you stay in that place with yourself. You know, that's never going to be a waste of time. That's like, it's such a good investment to put energy into. However, because it's such a good investment and it's so important, I feel like it makes sense that we should be quite protective of that and of our relationship with ourselves and of ourselves in general. Like, you have to be quite protective of yourself. It's like, you wouldn't buy a really expensive car. I always give the fucking weirdest examples ever, but like, and like spend all this money on it and then not insure it. Do you know what I mean? I kind of see it as like that. Like, if we're going to work on our self-love and our relationship with ourselves, like, we've got to put up some fucking barriers. Not barriers, but like some structures to keep this maintained, and not just like, yeah, I've put in all this work and then like one bad thing happens and I'm like a fucking bitch to myself again, you know? We want to keep it going. And I think there's a few things from my experience in my life have been things that have kind of gotten in the way for me, or things that have kind of become like issues just to maybe potentially save you some time. And, you know, obviously there's like a ton of things in life that can be disruptive to your kind of inner world. I kind of see it as like, there's an inner world and then there's an external world. I kind of see it that way. And I feel like sometimes there's certain things that can be in your external world that are disrupting your internal world. You know, there's a lot about boundaries, which I'm not going to go into massively because I have an entire episode about boundaries that I posted about a month ago. If you want that, I talked a lot about boundaries because they're very important, especially with what I'm talking about today. Like, one of the main ways I think to upkeep that relationship with yourself is to have boundaries. They're the key to like literally half of what I talk about. The answer is you need boundaries. Like, I just talk about them all the time. But boundaries, massive. And just being kind of conscious of your environment and who or what is in that. You know, conscious of your energy, where you're putting it, because I think quite often that's kind of the issue, you know? Finding kind of your center is kind of, I feel like kind of what I talked about in the last episode is, you know, finding that kind of center, that kind of home in yourself. And today is kind of talking about like, we're going to need to regularly be drawing ourselves back into that, because life is busy and you're not always going to be in a super good place, super focused on yourself. You know, there's things we need to be doing, there's disruptions all the time. And it's not that like when, you know, for example, when I'm busy, I'm like abandoning myself, Do you know what I mean? But there are times where I'm like, okay, I've been, you know, really busy this week. I've been working a lot. I've been seeing friends a lot. I've been doing this and that. And I need to like draw myself back to center regularly, because I think life is busy and that's fine. You know, that's fine. I like to be busy, but I think it's important to regularly recalibrate and go back to your center. Otherwise, if you don't for too long, I think it gets harder and harder to kind of come back home to yourself. It's kind of like a muscle. I feel like you need to keep that muscle warm of like you're fitting time in to come back, to come check in with yourself, to be with yourself. And that was kind of like my first point that I wrote down as like a way to kind of keep your inner world that you've made so much effort on safe, is I wrote down like implementing regular time to be with yourself in a way where you have the opportunity to be mindful and to check in and to feel. And the reason that I think this is so important, not only because it's good to spend time by yourself, you know, it's good to do that anyway, but not only that, it's because I think when this is going to be so hard to describe. When I'm talking about having this good relationship with yourself, I'm meaning like you feel in alignment with yourself, you know, you're looking after yourself, you're not ignoring things, you're not numbing things all the time, you're not running from things, like you're with yourself, you're on the same page as yourself. When there's something in your life that isn't really right, or something that we potentially need to change, whether it's like maybe you're in a relationship that you know deep down you need to end or isn't good for you or something, or maybe you've been aware that your job you need to quit or something, like there's something that isn't necessarily aligning with you. I think if you're always doing things and busy and distracting yourself, then it's very easy to kind of put that off, and kind of you're leaving yourself in this state of like almost dysregulation, where I know I felt this before, where it's like I know, for example, like I've had that where I'm like, I know there's like a relationship that I'm in that I'm not giving myself the chance to really think about because I know once I think about this, I'm gonna have to do something about this and I don't want to do that. So I'm just like, even when I was by myself, I was kind of like listening to something or doing something, and I feel like it's very important to have time where, I'm not saying you have to sit in silence and like stare at the wall for an hour, but time where you're giving yourself the opportunity to be mindful and to be present with yourself, so that if there is something that maybe your mind subconsciously or your body or something is, you know, wants to tell you to focus on, it's giving you the opportunity to kind of check in and listen to that. Because maybe there isn't anything, you know, maybe you go for a walk or whatever you want to do and you just kind of are like, no, I feel really like aligned and chilled and nothing's like fucking agitated in me. You know, quite often that is the case, and that's great, and then you've just like had a nice time by yourself, and that's, you know, that's all good. But I do think quite often when there is something kind of disrupting your peace or your relationship with yourself, and something that you know isn't healthy for you, it's very easy to not do anything about that. I think it's very easy to kind of not allow yourself to check in fully, because you know it will be uncomfortable, you know? But the reason that I'm saying this is because I think for me, in my experience, in hindsight, if I had checked in more genuinely and sat down almost and been like, Brooke, there's something that you don't want to think about. What is it and why? Be honest with yourself right now. I think it would have saved me a lot of time. And the reason that I'm suggesting doing this is because I think when you have things that you're kind of maybe a little bit in denial of, maybe a little bit like you're aware that this is kind of getting in the way, or like it's not good for you, I think it's easy to kind of run from those kinds of things and distract yourself and make excuses for why you haven't done anything about them. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, I just haven't like thought about it because of this and that, and like, oh, it's wrong timing, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I think part of self-love to me is being honest with myself and making sure that I'm not making choices that make me feel like shit. Do you know what I mean? And if I am, for example, like in a relationship that makes me feel like shit, or I'm, I don't know, in a job that makes me feel like shit or whatever, if I keep ignoring that or like pretending that's not an issue, like there's constantly going to be a kind of blockade between me and me being happier. And like I don't want that there. I feel like there was a time in my life, like I said, where I was in a relationship and I was kind of doing that to myself, where I was kind of like, no, it's fine, like let's just not think about that. I think it did affect my relationship with myself a bit, because I knew I wasn't, you know, doing something that I needed to do, and it was making me kind of lack trust in myself, because I was like, I guess I kind of deep down, sorry, it's like a therapy session, but deep down kind of knew that like there's a choice that would make me happy and I'm not doing it for myself. And like I talked about in the last episode, I think it's important to make sure that you're showing yourself that you're in safe hands with yourself, and that if you need to make a decision that's uncomfortable, or you need to like, you know, use discipline to do something that's, you need to do hard things, you'll do that for yourself. And I think that's the biggest sign of active love, you know. And I think it did affect my relationship with myself, where I was like, why am I not doing that for myself? Like I understand why, like I'm scared and like it's uncomfortable and it hurts and stuff, but also like my relationship with myself, it felt like I suddenly was like, oh, thank fuck, like I'm back to trusting myself once I kind of faced the reality of the situation. Do you know what I mean? Like it kind of made me feel like I'd reconnected with my actual self and I wasn't lying to myself all the time. Sorry, we've just gone down such a like rabbit hole, but I guess that's one thing that I would say in terms of self-love, is to make sure that you are, like I wrote down, implementing regular time for you to just allow yourself the opportunity to listen and to just give yourself the opportunity, because you might not have anything that necessarily needs to be addressed. You might not, you might be all good. But I guess it's kind of like the same thing you would do for a friend or a partner or anyone that you love. Again, like the first episode, treating yourself like someone that you actually love. You would do this if it was one of them. Like you're always kind of like, I'm here if you need me, if you want to talk about anything, like I'm always here. You're always kind of available for them if they want to, you know, talk to you or vent to you or whatever. And you need to do the same thing for yourself. Otherwise, if you can't do that with yourself, no one else is gonna fucking know. You don't even know. Do you know what I mean? I think having that kind of like open relationship with yourself, where even if you're like, okay, I think I need to be honest with myself, like I'm being a stupid bitch right now, like I'm entertaining this and this is bad, or I'm doing this too much and that's embarrassing and it's bad for me. Having that kind of open line of communication with yourself, that is so useful. Like that's kind of new to me and I'm really enjoying it. Like if I do something that's new or something that like I don't know how I feel about it, I make an active effort to like process my thoughts on things and not just constantly be like go go go. I actively will be like, I don't know, I'll go on a drive, or like even just like stand in the shower and just like fucking think, and like I just give myself that time to kind of process things with myself as they happen. Do you know what I mean? Or be like, okay, like last night was a bit weird, let's just like absorb. Like otherwise, like it's very easy, time goes very fast. And this might be a different point, but this is something I thought about on a walk the other day. See, if I didn't have time to go on a walk by myself, I wouldn't have thought of this. Like I think time where there's like nothing you really need to do is just so important. But I thought that it's really interesting that I feel like I'm giving myself right now kind of the time to like absorb the lessons that I've learned, because I feel like in life, like we're always obviously learning our lesson. We're always like, okay, well that didn't work and this worked. And I don't think, how do I word this? Like for me, obviously, like I'm kind of talking about relationships a little bit here. I think I was kind of like, I think it's good that I'm in a place now where I'm letting myself kind of slowly process the fucking last like few years of my life. Like I don't feel like I've truly been like single for a long time. And now I am. And it's not like I'm actively like, what lessons can I learn, blah, blah, blah. But like I'm giving myself that kind of quiet to actually, like, if there's anything I need to like let sink in about, you know, how I am in a relationship, or what I like or what I don't like, or what didn't work or whatever, like I'm here now kind of letting myself absorb that and listen to that and actually learn my lesson. Because I think if you this is just my personal opinion, like obviously do what you want, but if you kind of then again in another relationship and again you're not actually learning any of the lessons or giving yourself that kind of chance to, I don't know, I feel like I've completely gone off topic, but it was just something I thought about on a walk. I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like I actually feel like this is the only way that then things would be different for me. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, oh, I've actually given myself the time to fucking think. Okay, back to like what we're talking about. I mean, it's not fully irrelevant what I'm talking about. Like, it is self-love, and it is listening to yourself, and, you know, it's literally, to be fair, it's literally just an example of what I was talking about. Like, I've spent time alone, and it, you know, it lets things flow, and it lets you have thoughts that you otherwise may not have had. Oh no, to be fair, I did write down, otherwise time flies and you question what the fuck you're doing. That is kind of what I meant by what I just said. Like, if you didn't give yourself that kind of breathing room to be like, a lot's just happened, let's process it a little bit, slowly, baby steps, but like I'll give myself some time to actually let that sink in. You know, if you don't do that, it can be like years down the line and you're like, fuck, like how am I here? Do you know what I mean? And I don't want that to happen. So anyway, I need to stop talking about the same thing. Okay, next thing that I wrote down, this is something that I feel like is very popular these days anyway, and that's your attachment style. Have I done an episode on attachment styles? If not, maybe I should, because they are very interesting. But one piece of advice I suppose I would give is, because I do feel like relationships quite often can be one of the main disruptors. I definitely see, maybe it's my age group, I don't know, I don't necessarily think so. I think any age. But I see with a lot of people around me, and I've also been the same, where it's like their peace is being constantly ruined. You know, they're constantly being like stunted, and then they get back, and then they're back, and they're back, because they keep having the same, or like I've done it, like I said, I'm not just talking about other people, but like you keep having the same fucking patterns repeat in your relationships. And it's like, I genuinely think shitty relationships, or just tiring relationships, or ones that are just like, it's just a pattern, like you're just doing the same shit over and over again, that is like, it's, you can get so stuck in that as a pattern. And I think just being aware, becoming aware of what your attachment style is, I think will save you a lot of pain and time. I would massively suggest that. And I do think it's complex, because depending on who you're with, your attachment style may be different. I probably will do a whole episode on that, because I feel like I maybe have done that. Have I don't know, but I don't know, it was kind of like the first thing that came to my mind when I was thinking, like, okay, when in my life, or people around me's life, when I think about, you have a really good relationship with yourself, what do I think often ruins that? I think repeating patterns in relationships that aren't serving you and that are just stressing you out, and then you find someone else and it's like the same fucking dynamic, and then you find someone else that's the same, that, I think that is so big, because it's not just like a one-time thing, it's like you'll never stop kind of going through that cycle. And obviously attachment isn't like the answer to everything here, but like I think it, being conscious of what you're kind of drawn to, and you're kind of like, your repeating patterns, being aware of those is so important, because otherwise I do think you can just get in the same relationship over and over again, just with a different person, but it's like the same fucking relationship, you know? And I think that can just affect your self-esteem and your relationship with yourself so much. Like, it fucks with your, nothing fucks with your head quite like a shitty relationship, do you know what I mean? And I don't know, I think maybe it would help some people to know more about their own attachment style, because For example, if you are an anxious attachment, you know, and then maybe you find that you're regularly drawn to and find yourself in relationships with people that are more avoidant, more distant, more, you know, someone that you might perceive as a little bit less invested than you. It's not to say they are, but like that's how avoidants are generally perceived. Then you're going to be losing your mind over how stressful that is. Do you know what I mean? Because that kind of, I don't know, it's just these kind of dynamics that it's like you're kind of, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost. And I don't know, I just think being aware of like your patterns in general is really interesting. I've actually found it really interesting to kind of like observe myself a little bit, and like, why do I do that in friendships, and why does that certain thing always bug me, and why does this always happen in relationships, and why is this trait attractive to me when I don't want it to be? Like, where is that coming from? Like, I'm not saying you have to like fully deep dive and like go to therapy, but I mean, everyone would benefit from that. But like, I don't know, just becoming more conscious of the shit that is happening in your life ongoingly with different people in different situations, where it's like a pattern that is caused by you. I think that is huge, because I do think you can be disrupting your own peace without even knowing it. And you can be like working on your relationship with yourself but not even realize you're also the one kind of fucking stunting it at the same time. And it is one of those things where it is like baby steps. Like, I'm not saying the second that you notice a certain pattern of yours that you're gonna straight away start fixing it, but even just becoming aware of the shit you do is huge, because then naturally you start kind of dissecting it a little bit, you know? And you know, it's always a positive to be more self-aware about how you're kind of affecting yourself. Okay, something that I wrote down is learning when to walk away and be silent. We get so tempted, I think, always trying to like fight our case quite often. I don't know if you've had that, where there's certain things where you feel like you're always kind of like trying to fight your case and stand up for yourself and prove your points and blah blah blah, and learning when to just shut up and walk away. I've talked about this before, I think in my birthday episode, when I talked about like 21 things I've learned in 21 years. I think this was one of the things, is knowing when to just shut up and like let go of the rope. I think learning when to just save your energy and focus back on yourself and stop pouring it into something that's just like a drain. I think that is huge. And that, again, like these are kind of just like my personal experiences. These are things that have really affected my relationship with myself. And save yourself the time, and just, I think learning when to walk away and when to be silent and to just leave things alone, let things be, is a big act of self-love. And it's brave to kind of be like, think what you want. It's, again, like, it's a self-protection thing. It's a boundary thing, where it's like, I'm learning where my energy is worth putting and where it's not, and I'm gonna stop putting it in places where it's not fucking useful being there, and it's just depleting me. I don't know, I think that has done wonders for me in my life and made me feel really confident in myself in ways where I'm kind of like, just choose that your energy is more worthwhile elsewhere, and that you are hurting yourself in the process of doing that. It just makes you feel safe. I don't know. And something else I've written down, this may or may not resonate with people. I think it might. We'll see. Why has my neck gone red? The fuck? Why does my neck always go red? I don't know. This for me is huge, but I don't know if this is like a personality thing, because I have friends, like one of my best friends, who is like, we bond over this all the time. But like, there's some people that probably be like, what the fuck are you talking about? But I find getting like consumed by things I'm interested in, like whether it's like a book or a show or cooking or baking or, you know, certain music, like a certain artist, like getting consumed by something that is just, that you just find fun and that you're really interested in and that you're enjoying. Like, me and one of my best friends will literally just sit down and be like, so what have you been obsessed with this week? Because like, we both just have that personality type where like, we just go into like, I don't know, just like, I think I do have an obsessive personality. Like, I think everyone around me could say that, which I don't know, I really love that about myself, because when I love like a book, or like, I don't know, I go through such phases with things and I get so absorbed by it. Like if I watch a show and I love it, like I'm watching it every second I get, I'm talking about it all the time. Like I'm just like, I get so like into things. I don't know, and I think that for me is huge, because like when the external world is full of things disrupting, getting in the way, I think having something that just feels safe and comforting and like that's fun and interesting to you, that you can just kind of get lost in, there's something about it that kind of grounds you and kind of lets you not take shit so seriously. And I don't know how much this will resonate with anyone, but like when there's like a certain, I always make sure that there's like a certain thing that I'm really into at all times, because I just don't feel like I would be the person that I am. I don't think I'd be sane. Not calling myself sane, but if I didn't have something to like obsess over all the time. I don't know, it's like, it's just, there's something about it that's just so, it makes life more fun. And I think it does work as like a self-protection thing, because you can kind of like, I don't know, like if everything's stressing you out, having like, oh, I can just like go and read my book for like the entire evening and not touch my phone and pretend nothing's there. Like obviously it's kind of like a distraction, but it's like a healthier one, rather than being like, oh, I'm gonna go and drink, or like, I don't know what else is like an unhealthy distraction, like drinking, drugs, I guess sex could be one, but you know, it's kind of like a healthier way of, when life feels too much, instead of letting everything throw you off balance all the time, having something really fun that you're just really into, and like really letting that like kind of consume you for a while. Like there's something about that that really just keeps me sane. But like, I don't know, there's just something, I don't know, maybe this is like, you're like, how is this linked to self-love at all? Like what the fuck are you on about? But to me, like I was talking about last episode, like staying in your lane, minding your business, if you're doing that in any way, shape or form, I think you're doing like the right thing. Like minding your own business is like key. And you know, I think filling your time and, you know, your life with fun little passions and interests and things, it's just, to me, that's like literally what life is about. Anyway, I hope that this resonated. These are kind of some things in my life, in my experiences, that have kind of kept me on the right path. And there's certain main things that I feel like have disrupted my relationship with myself. So I kind of wanted to talk about them and ways to kind of prevent that from happening. And, you know, boundaries are key, but the reason I didn't really massively go into it is because, like I said, I've got a whole episode on it. But I do think it is like, if we're going to put all this work into ourselves, I think we need to make sure that we are upkeeping it, maintaining it, being protective with it, because, you know, I think especially when you've been in such a bad place before, and then you kind of get yourself out of it and you're actually in a good one, I think you do just get so protective over your energy and where you put it and everything. Like everything becomes very picky, and it is a fact that like your circles change, you know, the people around you change. Certain people that you once got along with, you now can't, because you've like fully changed how your mind is working. Do you know what I mean? Like you've kind of outgrown it. And again, I did a whole episode about outgrowing friends, and that's kind of linked too. I feel like literally every episode I do is like intertwined with, it's like one big episode, which is kind of fun. But I don't know, I think, yeah, you just do by nature get really protective over it, and I think that's good. And I think you should just make sure that your boundaries aren't so rigid that like you're not letting anything in, of course. I think you trust your own judgment at that point. Like, you know, when you're being too rigid and when you're not, and then you can kind of call yourself out on it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed this one, actually. It was really fun to make. It felt like I was just sitting and talking to a friend. Like some of them don't, some of them feel more like formal, and this one felt like I feel like I could tell you all my secrets. I don't know. But thank you for listening. I will talk to you next week.